Hey guys, we're starting on section 1.2 and 1.3. This is on page 7 of your notes packet. We're just going to start off with segment addition. So anytime it talks about point B being between AC, it just means that they are on a line and they're all points on that line. So this first part is super easy. It's just saying if A, B is, write it down here. If AB is 8 and BC is 3, obviously this is not drawn to scale, but that's okay. So if AB is 8 and BC is 3, then you would just add 8 and 3 together to find the length of the entire segment, which would be 11, 8 plus 3. So this is AB plus BC equals the whole thing, which is AC. So the important part to think about with segment addition is this: part plus part equals the whole. And you'll hear us say that a lot. Part plus part equals whole. That's segment addition. And obviously this one, super easy. You could just look at it and tell, oh, you add 8 and 3, it's 11. But it gets a little more difficult when we add variables in it. Okay, so same idea here. We've got A, B, and C. But now we have the whole thing. A all the way to C is 21. And then we have A to B, it's 13. So we're going to use the same formula, this part plus part equals a whole. We're going to add 13. We don't know what BC is. That's what we're looking for. And we're going to set it equal to 21. So it's still pretty easy. You've got, I put BX because I'm crazy. So we're going to say BC. That was weird. If we're trying to solve for BC, we're going to subtract 13 on both sides. And we're going to end up with 8, because 21 minus 13 is 8. So that is the length of BC, 8 units long. Alright, and then the last one, and these, again, obviously not drawn to scale, because this does not look like it's 8 units long, and does not look like compared to 13, but that's okay. We have A, B, and C. AB is 3x minus 1, BC is 13, and then AC is 6x. And it's a lot easier to write like this. This is how you'll see it in equations, and with the length above, the points labeled below, and then the whole thing is going to be below everything. So it's still part plus part equals a whole. So I'm going to write that part plus part equals the whole thing. So one of our parts is 3x minus 1. Another part is 13. Part. And then the whole thing is 6x. And now all you have to do is solve for x. But then we're not done once we solve for x. So we still have to solve for A, B, B, C, and AC. So basically, plug it back in. We're going to combine like terms. So 3x plus 12 equals 6x. We're going to subtract 3x on both sides. We're going to get 12 equals 3x. And then we're going to divide by 3 on both sides. I'm actually going to move this up here. 12 equals 3x. So x is going to be 4, which is great. We solved for x. We also have to solve for AB, for BC, and then the whole thing, which is AC. So this is part, and our whole. We already know that BC is 13, so we can just write that. we have to plug x in here. So if x is 4, 3 times 4 minus 1 is 11. Alright. And then if we plug in 4 here, 6 times 4 is 24. And then we can always check, if we add our two parts together, does it equal our whole? Yes, 11 plus 13 is 24. So we're good on that. Yeah, main things to remember, part plus part equals a whole. And you're just adding the two segments, setting them equal to the whole thing. Move it on to midpoint. So now, this word midpoint and bisects. If something is the midpoint, it means it's directly in the middle. And if something bisects a line, so if a point bisects a line, it means it cuts that in half. So if this is cut in half, then add these little tick marks, because that means that AB and BC are congruent. So I'll write that out here, and that's the symbol for congruent. So segment AB is congruent to segment BC, which we learned how to write segments in the last section. Okay, so we're going to take this information and what we know, the fact that B is the midpoint of AC, and that B bisects the segment, which means cuts in half. So we know that at AC, if the whole thing is 17, then we have to take 17 and cut it in half to be able to solve. So that's going to end up being 8.5 or 17 halves, depending on how the question wants it. If it wants it in fraction form, it would be 17 divided by 2. In decimal form, it would be 8.5. Alright, this one gives you AB. Alright, so if we know this is A, B, C, we know that these are congruent. And if AB is 4, that this would also have to be 4, because AB is congruent to BC. So that would mean the whole thing would be 8. Because 4 plus 4 is 8. So the length of AC must be 8. Alright. Now this one, I'm going to go ahead and draw it. Just makes it easier. So we have, I'm going to write this down here, A, B, C. If AB is 4x plus 1, we don't know what the length of BC is, but we do know that this is 5x plus 20. We've got to think about this a little bit. So typically, if we had AB and BC, if we knew what BC was, we could just put an equal sign in between it and set them equal. But since we don't, we do know that AC is twice as big as AB. So if 5x plus 20 is 2 times as big as this, we have to figure out how to set those equal. So 4x plus 1 cannot equal 5x plus 20. Obviously, this is not the same as this. But 2 of these will equal 1 of those. So we can write that here. 2 of those equals 1 5x plus 20. So 8x plus 2 equals 5x plus 20. And then I want to go ahead and solve by subtracting 2 on both sides. So get 8x equals 5x plus 18. We're going to subtract 5x. 3x equals 18. I'm running out of room. But 18 divided by 3 is 6. So x is going to be 6. Great. But that's not our final answer. We are looking for the length of BC. Well, since we know that BC and AB are the same length, all we have to do is plug 6 in and solve for the length of BC. Because we know that this has to be 25, that means this has to be 25. So, sorry, not A. The length of BC is going to be 25 because AB and BC are the same. Alright, B is between A and C, so I'm going to draw that. A, B, C. It says that AB is 2y plus 6, BC is y plus 8. To determine the value of y and determine if B is the bisector. So your question is, does this cut in half? Does B cut in half? Does it cut this line segment in half? Let's see. The way we can figure that out is by setting them equal to each other. If we set it equal to each other, because the only way for it to be a bisector is if AB is congruent to BC. So we're going to write that AB congruent to BC. And then when we plug those in, I'm going to subtract y on both sides. So minus y, minus y. I'm also going to subtract 6 on both sides. Alright, so get rid of your y and your 6. 2 minus 1 is just y. And then 8 minus 6. I wrote 5, but that's backwards. Let's write 2. Let me fix that real quick. It's the wrong thing. That's better. So your y is 2. You're not done. What you've done is figured out what y is. You still have to plug 2 back in and make sure these are the same numbers. If they're the same numbers, then yes, B is the bisector. If they are not the same length, then no, B is not the bisector. So 2 times 2 plus 6 equals 10. 2 plus 8 equals 10. So yes, B is the bisector. Alright, this is the advanced part. So it talks about the endpoints of A and D. So I'm going to write point A and D here. One is at -2 and one is at 10. So we're thinking of this as a number line. So 0 is about right here, -2, 0 is about right here, and then it goes all the way to 10. And then it says that the number line is segmented in a ratio of 1, 3, 2. So I'm going to put my points here because it's broken up into 3 different segments. Alright, so I'm just going to call this is supposed to be a D. I'm struggling, guys. Here we go. It obviously said the endpoints of A, D are -2 and 10. So I'm going to call this point B and this point C, and it is broken up into 1 part, 2 parts, 3 parts at a 1 to 3 to 2 ratio. Anytime you have a ratio, you're going to add an x to that number. Alright, so x, this was going to be 3x, and this is going to be 2x. Because in this ratio, we have a 1 to 3 to 2 ratio, so we have to add that. Remember, ratios are simplified, so they need to be multiplied by something to figure out the actual length. Alright, first step for this is to figure out how long is it from A to D? So if we start at -2 and we go to 10, we think -2 is 2 away from 0, and then add 10 to that, so it's 12 units long. From -2 to 10, it's 12. If you want to figure out the math for that, it's just the absolute value of A minus B. Oh, absolute value. So the absolute value of -2 minus 10, my two numbers. Absolute value of -12, which is a positive 12. So that's how we figure out our distance, right there. All right. Now, we talked about this on the last page, as part plus part equals whole. Now it's part plus part plus part equals a whole. Why are we trying to do that? Because we want to solve for x. So over here, I'm going to write x plus 3x plus 2x equals the whole thing. Okay, and to figure that out, I'm going to add the x's together. 6x, nope, yeah, that's 6x, equals 12. X equals 2, which is great, but that does not solve for the length of every segment. So we have to plug that in, the length of AB, the length of BC, and the length of CD. So AB is X, B, I don't need to write that. I need to go ahead and plug that in. I want to plug 2 in for here, 2 in here, and 2 in here, because that's what we solved for X. AB is 2, 6, 3 times 2, and 2 times 2 is 4. And those are our final answers. And just to check yourself, you can add them all up and make sure they add to the total distance. I'll get one more of these. But the endpoints of A, B are 2 and 8, 2 and 8, A and B. And it's segmented in a 2-to-1 ratio. It said P partitions the segment in the 2-to-1 ratio. So point P cuts that segment right there. A 2x to x ratio. Alright, so we have to figure out the length of the entire segment. So the absolute value of 2 minus 8 is the absolute value of -6, which is 6. So the length of that segment is 6. And all we have to do is add 2x plus x to equal 6. So part plus part equals a whole. I'll write that. So 3x equals 6. X equals 2. And then we are needing to plug this back in. So multiply that by 2. Plug 2 in there. So the length of AP is 4. The length of PB is 2. But this is asking, what is point P? So find point P. A is at 2, B is at 8. We have to find point P. The length of this is 4 units long. This is 2 units long. So we can go either way. We can start at 2 and count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh. And I should have started at 2. 2, 3, 4, 5. We didn't do 6. That makes a lot more sense. Or you can start here at 8 and go back 7, 6. So 2 away from 8 is 6. 4 away from 2 is also going to be 6. So point P is at 6. So you just have to read the question and make sure you understand what it's asking. Yeah. Alright, last point is just figuring out midpoint on here. And I've got my midpoint formula up here. And I've got my x1, my y1, my x2, my y2. And that's where these numbers go when you're plugging into the formula. I'm going to start by showing you plugging it into the formula, And then I will graph one and show you how to do that, to show both ways to do this. So my formula is x1 plus y1 divided by 2, and x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2, negative 4 over 2, and 8 over 2. So 4 plus 0 is negative 4, 3 plus 5 is 8. So we end with negative 2, 4. And that is our midpoint that is directly in between negative 4, 3, and 0, 5. That's our new midpoint. So this is just plugging it into the formula. You can also use a graph. So I'll graph negative 2 and 7. And that's point P. And I'll graph 10, negative 3. And that is point Q. I have a ruler here. I have P all the way to Q. So one way I can figure this out is I figure out what is the change in the x value, and then I cut it in half. I figure out what's the change in the y value, and I cut it in half. So the change in x value is 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's 12 units long. The change in the y value is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 units long. So I'll take my 12 and I'll cut it in half, and I get 6. So instead of going over 12 units, you only want to go half that far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we want to come down, instead of coming down 10 units, we only want to come down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is going to be our midpoint for 2. Alright. And so it's directly in between. You can use either method to do that. This is the mathematical way, this is the graphing, and that finds the midpoint. Okay, now this gives us a midpoint and one end point. So if it does that, I'm going to show you the mathematical way here. I will show you the graphing way here. You can decide which way you like better. Alright, so our midpoint formula is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So I'm actually going to split this and make it x1 plus x2 divided by 2 equals our m, so the x value of our m midpoint. And then over here I'm going to have y1 plus y2 divided by 2 equals the y value of our midpoint. So I'm going to call it mx and my. The y value. This is going to be our mx. This is your x value. This is our my. This is your y value. This is going to be x1 and y1 because this is your endpoint. Alright. This is my midpoint. So now I can plug my numbers in and solve for my x2 and y2. x1 is 7 plus x2, we don't know what that is, equals our mx, which is 1. Alright, we want to get rid of this fraction, so we want to multiply by 2 on both sides. And all that happens here is this cancels out. The numerator is not affected in any way. So we're just going to bring this down. And then 1 times 2 is 2. So what that does is that gets rid of our fraction by multiplying by 2 on both sides. Because multiplying by 2 is the opposite of dividing by 2, so it gets rid of that fraction. And then we want to subtract 7 on both sides. So our x2 is going to be negative 5. Okay. our y1 is 2. We don't know our y2, that's what we're looking for. And then our m, our midpoint y value, is -2. We want to multiply by 2 on both sides to cancel out that fraction. Didn't mean to write x, I'm going to write a plus sign. 2 plus y2 equals -4. And then we want to subtract 2 on both sides to get y2 all by itself. And you end up with -6. So our final answer is -5, -6. And then for our j value, or sorry, for this other question, we're going to solve by graphing. So this is the math way. This is the graphing way. We're going to graph our 2 points. 5, -2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. -2. And 0, -1. This is our j. And this is our midpoint. So to find the other endpoint, if one of our endpoints is here, the other one's going to be somewhere over here. This is going to go up and over. You figure out what's the change in the y value, what's the change in the x value. It goes over 5, it goes up 1. And so if halfway is up 1 and over 5, the whole way should be up 2 and over 10. So you're basically doing the opposite of what we did up here when we divided by 2. So we want to go up 2 and over 10. Or you could always just go up 1 and over 5 again, starting at your midpoint. And then this would be our new endpoint, -5, 0. And that's your answer. So you can do it either way, it's up to you. But that is the end of this section.